already started understanding that the motel operated through repetition, through patterns that only became visible after they repeated enough times. And I realized the ringing itself wasn't random, it was part of a sequence. And for some reason that made it feel more dangerous than if it had simply been unexplained. And I watched the phone vibrate slightly against the nightstand with each ring until it stopped again. And a few seconds later, I heard the sound of footsteps outside my room, slow and deliberate, stopping directly in front of my door. And I held my breath without meaning to, listening as the silence stretched between each small sound. And then came 3 soft knocks, evenly spaced, not aggressive or urgent, just patient. And I remember staring at the door while every instinct told me not to move, because the knocks didn't feel like someone asking to come in. They felt like someone confirming I was still there. And after the 3rd knock, nothing happened for nearly a full minute. And then I heard the footsteps continue slowly down the walkway toward the next room, followed by another set of 3 knocks somewhere farther away. And I stayed frozen in bed long after the sound faded, because something about that pattern felt deliberate, almost procedural. Like whoever was outside wasn't searching randomly, but following some kind of routine, and eventually curiosity overcame fear enough that I stood carefully and moved toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just slightly to look out into the parking lot. And the first thing I noticed was that every curtain in every room was now fully open, every single one. And through each window I could see empty motel rooms lit by identical yellow lamps, all vacant except for mine. And the sight of it hit me with a kind of quiet unreality that's hard to explain, because I knew those rooms had been occupied earlier. I had seen lights, movement, silhouettes behind curtains. But now the entire motel looked abandoned except for me. And before I could fully process that thought, I noticed someone standing near the ice machine across the parking lot, completely still, facing toward my room. And the distance and darkness made details impossible to make out clearly. But I could tell immediately there was something wrong with the posture, something too rigid and perfectly balanced, like a person standing still for a photograph rather than naturally at rest. And I remember watching that figure for several seconds, trying to decide if it was actually moving at all, and then I realized the more important detail, which was that I couldn't remember seeing it there when I first looked outside. And that realization unsettled me enough that I let the curtain fall closed immediately, stepping backward away from the window. And the moment I did, the phone rang again, louder this time somehow. And I don't know what made me answer it then, except that by that point it already felt like refusing had become part of whatever was happening. Like not answering was still participation in the pattern, and my hand moved almost automatically as I lifted the receiver to my ear, and for a second there was nothing but static, low and uneven, like distant radio interference. And then I heard a voice speaking softly, calm and emotionless, saying, "You looked outside too early." And the line went dead immediately after that. And I stood there holding the receiver long after the call ended, because something about those words felt less like a threat and more like a correction, as though I had broken a rule I wasn't supposed to know yet. And from somewhere outside came another slow scraping sound along the railing, closer this time, and that was the moment I understood the worst part of the motel. Wasn't the isolation or the strange phone calls or even the figure outside. It was the feeling that the building itself already knew exactly how I would react. Before I reacted, like every decision I made had happened there before, many times, and I was only stepping through a sequence that had already been laid out long before I arrived.